Everyone talks about discipline like it's a habit. Wake up early, hit the gym, stay focused. But there's a level far beyond that, a level so intense it feels almost inhuman. It's the point where discipline stops being an action and becomes the very core of who you are. Most people think discipline is about doing hard things consistently, waking up early, staying focused, controlling your impulses, and forcing yourself to follow routines even when you don't feel like it. And sure, that's the basic level of discipline, the level everyone talks about. But the truth is, this is only the surface. The scariest level of discipline is something entirely different. It's not just about what you do, it's about who you become. This level of discipline requires a shift so deep that your emotions, distractions, excuses, and even your old identity lose their power over you. You reach a point where you no longer negotiate with yourself, you no longer seek motivation, and you no longer rely on willpower. Instead, your actions become automatic because they're tied to a version of yourself you refuse to compromise. Why is it scary? Because it demands sacrifice, sometimes extreme sacrifice. It requires cutting off old habits, old comforts, old patterns, and sometimes even old relationships that keep you tied to your weaker self. It's scary because it forces you to confront the truth about who you are and what you've been avoiding. This level of discipline strips away your excuses and exposes the gap between your potential and your reality. But it matters more than anything because this is the level where transformation actually happens, not temporary change, not motivation-based change, real, permanent identity level transformation. When discipline becomes part of your identity, you no longer chase goals, you embody them. You no longer try to become strong, you are strong. And once you reach that point, every part of your life begins to shift in ways you never thought possible. Story or real example. To understand what the scariest level of discipline looks like, I want to tell you a story about a man named Hiroshi Takeda, a former salaryman from Osaka who eventually became one of the most respected practitioners in a remote Zen monastery. His story isn't famous, it isn't glamorous, and it isn't something you'll find on social media. But it is one of the clearest examples of identity level discipline you will ever hear. Hiroshi was an ordinary man with an ordinary life. For years, he followed the same routine: wake up at 6 a.m., commute through crowded trains, work long hours under bright fluorescent lights, and return home too tired to do anything except collapse onto his futon. From the outside, everything looked normal. Inside, though, he felt like he was slowly dissolving, losing his sense of purpose, losing the fire he once had, losing the ability to feel present in his own life. One morning, after nearly collapsing on the train from exhaustion, Hiroshi made a decision that shocked everyone around him. He quit his job, packed a small bag, and traveled to a monastery deep in the mountains of Aomori. He didn't go for peace. He didn't go for relaxation. He went because he knew he needed something far more extreme, a complete rewiring of who he was. The monks accepted him as a novice, but what he stepped into was nothing like he expected. The discipline at the monastery wasn't about meditation and calm breathing. It was relentless. Every day began at 3:15 a.m. with the sound of a wooden clapper echoing through the dark halls. There was no snooze button, no hesitation. If you weren't up immediately, you were left behind. The mornings began with hours of zazen, silent, sitting meditation, legs numb, back straight, not moving a single muscle. Pain wasn't an obstacle, it was a teacher. Discomfort wasn't avoided, it was embraced. After meditation came work, chopping wood, carrying water from the river, sweeping long stone paths in total silence. Every action mattered. Every movement was intentional. There were no shortcuts, no complaints, no thinking of, I don't feel like it. Feelings simply didn't matter. Hiroshi struggled. In his first month, he thought about quitting every day. His body ached constantly. His mind screamed at him. He missed comfort, entertainment, noise, anything to distract him from himself. But in the monastery, there was nowhere to hide. Discipline wasn't something the monks practiced. It was something they were. The turning point came during the winter training season, known as Ango, when temperatures dropped below freezing and monks trained even harder. One morning, as he was carrying buckets of icy water from the river, his hands trembling and his breath turning to fog in the air, he suddenly realized something. He was no longer negotiating with himself. He wasn't thinking about comfort or quitting or whether he wanted to do the task. His body simply moved. His mind simply accepted. It wasn't willpower, it was identity. That moment terrified him because he realized the version of himself who hesitated, who complained, who avoided discomfort was gone. Over the following months, Hiroshi changed in ways he never expected. He developed a kind of discipline that didn't come from force, it came from alignment. His actions matched his intentions. His behavior matched his values. There was no gap between what he said he wanted and how he lived. The monks didn't praise him, they didn't congratulate him. They simply saw that he had crossed an invisible threshold. He had shifted from discipline as effort to discipline as being. When Hiroshi eventually left the monastery and returned to modern life, people barely recognized him. He moved with calm precision. He spoke only when necessary. He didn't waste time, energy, or attention. He didn't rely on motivation or mood. His discipline was woven into every part of his identity. He didn't become successful because he forced himself to work harder. He became successful because he became the kind of person who no longer needed force. He didn't chase habits. He didn't chase goals. He embodied them. This is what the scariest level of discipline looks like. No punishment, not suffering, not brute force, but becoming a version of yourself who simply does what must be done without hesitation, without excuses, and without negotiation. Break down the psychology of extreme discipline. To understand the scariest level of discipline, you must understand that it has almost nothing to do with routines, habits, or motivation. Those are beginner levels. True discipline, the kind that transforms a person entirely, comes from a deep psychological shift that rewires your relationship with discomfort, identity, and purpose. It is mental reconstruction from the inside out. The first key is detachment from emotion-driven decision-making. Most people operate based on feelings. I don't feel like working. I feel tired. I feel stressed. I feel overwhelmed. At the extreme level of discipline, those emotions still appear, but they lose authority. You stop giving feelings the final vote. Instead, behavior becomes anchored to principles. The mind learns that discomfort does not equal danger. The brain stops treating resistance as a threat, and your actions become stable, predictable, and consistent, regardless of internal noise. The second psychological shift is identity alignment. At lower levels of discipline, you try to push yourself toward a goal. At higher levels, you become the kind of person who who naturally moves toward that goal. That identity shift is the true source of power. When discipline becomes part of who you are, you don't battle temptation, you rise above it. You don't negotiate with yourself, you simply execute. Identity level discipline removes inner conflict, and without inner conflict, consistency becomes effortless. You don't run because you need motivation, you run because you are a runner. You don't study because you feel productive, you study because you are someone who learns. This is the psychology of embodiment, not effort. The third component is controlled environment and ritualization. People underestimate how much discipline is shaped by surroundings. Extreme discipline thrives on structure, waking at the same time, doing tasks in the same order, reducing decision making, and limiting chaos. When your environment is clean, intentional, and optimized, the mind stops wasting energy on micro decisions and discipline becomes automated. Rituals aren't boring, they're psychological anchors. They signal the brain, this is who I am, this is what I do. With enough repetition, the ritual becomes unconscious. The fourth factor is strategic sacrifice. No one reaches deep discipline without letting go of something significant: comfort, distraction, relationships that dilute their purpose, and habits that weaken their identity. Sacrifice is not punishment, it is refinement. It removes what pulls you backward so your energy can move forward without friction. People fear this stage because it demands honesty. It forces you to confront the things you cling to, not because they help you, but because they comfort you. Extreme discipline requires you to let comfort die. The fifth psychological pillar is delayed emotional reward. Most people chase instant dopamine, scrolling, entertainment, food, comfort, validation. Extreme discipline rewires the brain to value long-term reward over immediate gratification. It shifts your pleasure system so that progress, mastery, and self-respect feel better than temporary indulgence. This isn't about resisting temptation, it's about no longer finding pleasure in the things that once controlled you. The final component is identity, harmony, the alignment between thought, action, and desire. When discipline reaches its highest form, the mind becomes quiet. There is no battle between what you want and what you do. You stop wasting energy fighting yourself. You stop chasing the version of you that you wish you were because you've already become them. Your behavior matches your values. Your habits match your goals. Your life matches your vision. And that harmony gives birth to something incredibly rare, inner strength that does not collapse under pressure. This level of discipline is scary because it removes the illusions we hide behind. It takes away the excuses we use to feel safe. It forces us to take full responsibility for who we are and who we become. But once you cross into this territory, you gain something few people ever experience: a mind that is unshakable, a purpose that is undeniable, and a life that becomes entirely your own. The transformation, when someone reaches the deepest level of discipline, the transformation is not subtle, it's undeniable. It shows up not only in their actions, but in their posture, their presence, their energy, and their silence. Discipline reshapes a person from the inside out, and while the gains are powerful, the losses are just as real. This transformation is not gentle, it is a shedding of an old self. The first transformation is clarity. Before developing extreme discipline, the mind is cluttered, filled with conflicting desires, endless distractions, and constant noise. But discipline cuts through the noise like a blade. You begin to see what matters and what doesn't. You become less reactive, less overwhelmed, less confused. Purpose becomes sharp and unmistakable. There's no guessing, no wandering, no drifting. Every decision becomes intentional. The second transformation is internal strength. When discipline becomes part of your identity, you stop collapsing under stress or pressure. You stop retreating at the first sign of difficulty. You stop looking for shortcuts or escapes. Challenges become fuel instead of obstacles. You begin to trust yourself in a way you never have before. You know that no matter what happens, you will follow through. This inner strength becomes a quiet, unshakable foundation that carries you through everything. The third transformation is freedom, ironically, the very thing most people think discipline takes away. People assume that discipline means restriction, control, limitation. But once discipline becomes instinctual, it frees you from the addictions, impulses, and emotional reactions that once controlled your life. You are no longer prisoner of your moods, your cravings, or your excuses. You become free to create the life you actually want rather than the one your habits force you into. But transformation also brings losses, necessary ones. The first major loss is comfort, not physical comfort, but psychological comfort. You lose the old patterns that once protected your ego. No more hiding behind excuses like, I'll do it tomorrow, or I wasn't in the mood. You lose the false sense of safety that comes from avoiding responsibility. This can feel like a part of you is dying because it is. The second loss is certain relationships. Extreme discipline disrupts dynamics with people who prefer the old version of you, the version that was comfortable, predictable, and easy to understand. Some friends drift away, some feel threatened, some label you as obsessed or too serious. This is painful but necessary. Discipline reveals who respects your growth and who relies on your stagnation. The third loss is pleasure dependency. When you detach from instant gratification, things that once entertained you now feel empty. Scrolling, binge watching, procrastination, they lose their hold. This can feel like boredom at first, but it eventually evolves into a deeper sense of peace. You realize that your attention is too valuable to waste. And then comes the most powerful gain of all, transformation of identity. You stop recognizing the old version of yourself. You look back and wonder how you ever lived with so little intention. You move differently. You think differently. You carry yourself with a calm intensity that others notice, even if you never say a word. People start asking you how you stay so focused, how you stay so consistent, how you stay so grounded. But the truth is, you're not staying anything. You simply are that now. And that is the deepest transformation discipline can offer. A life aligned with purpose, a mind free from internal conflict, and a version of yourself you once thought was impossible. How the viewer can apply it. Reaching the deepest level of discipline isn't about copying a monk or living in isolation. It's about taking practical steps that reshape your identity from the inside out. You don't need a monastery, you need structure, intention, and a willingness to confront your current patterns. Here's how you can start today. The first step is creating one non-negotiable habit, not 10 habits, not a long list of goals, one single action that you commit to no matter what. This habit should be simple but meaningful. Daily stretching, 10 minutes of meditation, journaling, reading, or a daily walk. The purpose isn't the habit itself, it's the identity you build by refusing to break it. This teaches your brain that your word is law. The second step is removing one major distraction. Everyone has a leak in their discipline, something that drains focus and energy. It might be social media, video games, late night scrolling, toxic conversations, or mindless entertainment. You don't have to remove everything. Just eliminate the one that controls you the most. When you cut out a distraction, you reclaim mental power you didn't know you were losing. The third step is creating a stable daily anchor. This is a routine you follow at the beginning or end of your day to signal discipline to your mind. It could be waking up at the same time, making your bed, preparing your clothes the night before, or spending the first 20 minutes of the day in silence. Anchors create structure. Structure creates clarity, and clarity supports discipline. The fourth step is embracing controlled discomfort. This is where true transformation begins. Choose one thing each day that pushes you slightly outside your comfort zone. Cold showers, a longer workout, deep work without your phone, honest reflection, or completing a task you've been avoiding. Discipline grows when you voluntarily face discomfort. It teaches your mind that resistance is not a barrier. The fifth step is identity reinforcement. Every day, remind yourself who you are becoming. This isn't affirmation, it's alignment. Instead of telling yourself, I'm trying to be disciplined, say, I am someone who follows through. Instead of, I want to be focused, say, I am the kind of person who finishes what I start. The mind follows identity, and identity follows repeated action. The sixth step is cutting negotiation. One of the biggest killers of discipline is the inner voice that says, 5 more minutes, I'll do it later, or I'm not ready. Starting today, practice acting without debate. If it's time to move, you move. If it's time to work, you work. Acting immediately rewires your brain to trust your commands. You become your own authority. The seventh step is tracking progress with brutal honesty. Not perfection, just truth. Write down whether you kept your commitments each day. If you failed, record why. Not to punish yourself, but to understand your patterns. Awareness is the foundation of discipline. You cannot fix what you refuse to acknowledge. The final step is building a small circle of accountability. This doesn't have to be a friend or mentor. It can be a notebook, an app, or even a calendar on your wall where you mark every day you stayed consistent. Seeing your progress build creates momentum. Momentum keeps you moving when motivation fades. You don't become extremely disciplined overnight. You become disciplined through identity shifts, repeated actions, and the willingness to step into discomfort day after day. Start small, stay consistent, and over time, you will become the kind of person who doesn't need motivation because discipline has become part of who you are. When you reach the highest level of discipline, you become someone most people can't understand because they've never experienced that kind of inner power. This isn't about forcing yourself or living like a machine. It's about becoming aligned with your purpose so deeply that hesitation disappears. Your actions, your habits, your mindset, everything points in the same direction. And yes, it's scary, not because it's impossible, but because it requires you to let go of the version of yourself that has kept you comfortable. But once you step into that new identity, everything changes. You think clearer, you move with intention, you stop waiting for motivation and start creating your own momentum. The strongest version of you is not found in bursts of inspiration, it's found in the quiet, consistent decisions you make every single day. This is the journey of discipline. And if you choose it, it will transform your life in ways you never imagined. If this message pushed you to rethink your potential, subscribe and be part of the journey. I release videos designed to strengthen your discipline, sharpen your mindset, and elevate your life. Start building the version of yourself you know you're capable of becoming.